So my plan is for achieving equality by 2050 by working with the future leaders of tomorrow, our school children.
Welcome back. I'm Mike Hill and you're watching Futurists.world, your home for big ideas about the future and how to shape the world of tomorrow. Today is going to be stunning because we're catching up with inspirational entrepreneur, speaker and thought leader Shivani Gopal on the future of wealth. Identifying herself as an Indian Australian, Shivani is the CEO of The Remarkable Woman, a community dedicated to empowering women and promoting gender equality. She's been recognised with leadership awards including Female BDM of the Year and was named one of Australia's top career women by Cosmopolitan magazine. Shivani has quickly become recognised as a feminist thought leader, helping women navigate their careers, businesses and find financial success. So get ready to be empowered and discover a brighter future. And remember, keep your finger on the pulse by subscribing to our podcast at Futurists.world. I am thrilled to be here with you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for having me, Mike.
We're talking today about the future of wealth. Can you tell me, from your point of view, what does wealth mean? How do you define it?
Wealth for me means opportunity. It's the ability for people to have the independence to make the right choices for them as and when they see fit, so that they're able to work in the kind of job that they want to, get educated in the right way for their future, buy in the kind of suburb that they want to, but also, most importantly, have that ability to leave an unsafe or an unhappy relationship. So wealth can be so many things: wealth of knowledge, wealth of time, but really the wealth of finances actually gives you that. So that's wealth for me.
And I know this means something to you personally. So
Yes.
Tell us a bit about your personal story and how you've come to this.
Yeah, sure. I think for me, wealth has always been so intertwined. I grew up in, in a family where I've got, I had parents who are incredibly hardworking, and I saw them, always equally pitching in the household, running a restaurant, and managing a day job at the same time. And so wealth is so deeply ingrained in terms of managing your own financial independence. And that message for me constantly stayed, and actually came back time and time again in my life. So I ended up having an early adult marriage, which unfortunately for me didn't work out, as they do from time to time. And I was faced in a position, because of my cultural heritage, where it was completely unacceptable to be able to leave a marriage. In Indian culture, you get married for 7 lifetimes. Now, Mike,
That's a big commitment.
Oh man, it's huge, right? I mean, people think about buying a house or moving in with someone, and then there's 7 lifetimes, right? So I'm a romantic, and I just think that is absolutely beautiful. But then there's the pragmatist, which says, that's a bit of a commitment, as you said. So for me, it didn't work out, and I was terribly unhappy. And because of my community and cultural background, it was a huge no-no to get divorced. And I found myself thinking that I was going to lose my family, my friends, my community, and have this almost black stain on me. So any strangers who saw you couldn't see it, but anyone that knew you would know that you have it. And I was absolutely petrified of what I was going to do. And Mike, the one thing that got me through was my financial independence. And it was my life raft to be able to make the choices that were right for me. And that's a very strong lesson that I learned from my parents. Always be financially independent. In fact, never rely on a man for your money. And so it's one of the reasons why I'm such a huge advocate now for financial literacy, financial independence, and especially for women. Because when you emancipate women, you're not just freeing them, you're freeing, their families, their communities, that microeconomic, situation that they come from.
Look, we're sitting here in Sydney, and it's an amazing city, and it's in an amazing country, and you'd think that this would be doing well, but how far away from true equity are we when we're looking at wealth equity between men and women?
We're about 202 years away, actually, so it's incredible. You and I, unless there's a magic pill, which would be wonderful if that comes out, we'll be long dead by then, and so will our children. And that's what's really tragic about this. What's really tragic is that men and women have perceived equality, but we don't actually have real equality. And what's missing from that is that genuine equity. So the World Economic Forum actually did a survey back in 2018, and they found that socially, economically, politically, we are 202 years away from getting to gender equality, and it is absolutely outrageous. And the challenge is that because we have perceived equality, we're very much fighting in the shadows to get what should really be something that should be an absolute given. You know, equal pay for equal work, equal opportunity, and also the ability to authentically be you without, you know, being confined with a gendered mould or cast of what you should see and look and behave like.
How do we accelerate that program? 202 years is completely unacceptable. I think
really is.
Yeah, and I think most people would agree with that. So, you know, what's your vision of the future? How do we get to this?
Yeah, so my vision of the future is for everyone to be able to live out their legacy, and wealth is a huge contributor to that, but equal choice, equal opportunity, equity, equality is all a running factor in that, and so that is my vision for the future. And Mike, you know, when I talk to people about equality and I tell them how abhorrent 202 years is, I tell them about my vision for equality by 2050, and I get two types of responses. "Ooh, Shivani, that's really ambitious." And then the other response is, "Why that long? Why can't you just talk to some people and, you know, speak to world leaders and speak to national leaders and make it happen in 5 years? I mean, even waiting another 30 years just seems absolutely ridiculous." Look, it does, but there is so many cultural, social biases that we need to unwind in order to get there. Things like the male breadwinner bias, things like confirmation bias, that all lead towards gender inequality. And then, of course, the large one, which is where what we call the motherhood penalty, when women become mothers and as a result they take some time out of the workforce, and the gap between men and women financially just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So my plan is for achieving equality by 2050 by working with the future leaders of tomorrow, our school children, and actually teaching them not only what financial literacy looks like, because girls and boys need that. We all need to know how to manage our money. It's imperative, whether it's cash money today or Bitcoin tomorrow. It's all a level of finance, isn't it? And so it's that, but it's also leadership literacy, and also how to be inclusive in your level of play, in your level of language. All of that is so important. And I think that when they become the leaders of tomorrow, so essentially 30 years from now, we'll be able to dismantle that by working on the schools now. So hence my Equality 2050 program, where essentially it's pro bono program where I go out to primary schools and I teach them about what gender equality, financial literacy, leadership literacy really looks like.
Wow, great work. Well done. So we're talking about the future of wealth, and that is tied to some extent to the future of work.
Yes.
So the nature of work and the type of work we do and the way we do it is changing, and it's changing really fast. The influence of AI and automation is really changing the nature of the workforce. Is this an opportunity for women in building their wealth?
Absolutely, it is. It is because it enables women to be able to stretch their wings and you know, get educated and get skilled in so many other areas, especially when it comes to technology. And I think that's incredibly important. And it also enables them to diversify their income streams so that women can either work from home, have more flexible workplace options, or they can have a side hustle as well and have a side business, or have their 9-to-5 job and do some contracting work on the side. But I think when it comes to the future of work, you're very right. Those things need to be taken into account. So flexible workplace options are going to be more and more commonplace. You're going to see work from home options more commonplace, but also technology playing a much bigger driver. And I think that when you think about, you know, women in work and the future of work, when you talk about tech, most people think, oh, when it comes to tech, if I'm not a techie, if I'm not a developer, if I'm not a coder, I can't work in a tech organization. Yeah, you can. You don't actually need to be the techie. I've just started a fintech and I'm not a techie myself. We have my co-founder and CTO who does that. I'm more the domain leader when it comes to wealth. So you could be the domain expert when it comes to law, when it comes to marketing, whatever it is. You could be the HR person in that tech industry, but you're going to find these tech businesses are going to be far more savvy around giving you different workplace options, because, you know, we're living in a world of almost, you know, 24/7 work hours where people need to, you know, be able to take up those chunks at any given point in time.
Okay, so you're working on this amazing Equality 2050 project, and you're working with a lot of amazing women. What gives you hope? What fills your cup?
That's such a good question. What gives me hope is seeing and reading and speaking to women about what their ambitions are. In fact, I just got an email about 5 minutes before, you know, we sat down to chat, and it's a woman talking about how she wants to be a kick-ass leader and she wants to inspire the people she meets. And when you see and hear from people who just want more for their life, that's so infectious. And it starts to open up your mind on how you can help them do that. And by helping others, you end up helping yourself. And so I think there's this wonderful norm that we're creating out of it. So what really gives me hope for the future is seeing, so many, female CEOs, so many female executives, coming up to the board. It's seeing incredible young girls like Greta Thunberg talking about climate change and really bringing it to the forefront as it needs to be. So seeing all these incredible women come to the forefront really gives me hope for our future. And I think that we're going to see, this sort of ambition unleashed unashamedly, like we never have before, where women are going to stop hiding behind this perceived mold where they need to play small and just really genuinely be themselves.
Brilliant. Pop culture is part of our series. We actually talk a bit about it because it does inspire a number of futurists. And I'm just wondering if there's anything in the pop culture out there in the zeitgeist that you feel, really sets the tone for what you hope for in the future.
Yeah, look, popular culture is really embracing, and it's what I think is a futurist world, or what should be today's world. And I was just watching a show recently, and so everyone in that show, all the lead characters were women. So of course there's Olivia Colman, and she plays one of the detectives, and David Tennant's a great guy, so he was in there. But then when they go to the court case, the judge is a woman, and she's an Indian woman in Scotland. And so I'm sitting there on the couch going, oh my God, it's representation of myself. I've never seen this growing up.
Wow, this sounds amazing. So, and what's the name of it?
Broadchurch.
Broadchurch, okay,
yes,
great.
Yes, and then the defense lawyer, the prosecutor, they're all women. And it was just such a girl power moment. I mean, as a girl, growing up, primary school, high school, you don't see that. You don't see that on TV. You don't see that in corporate Australia. And then you see that on a phenomenal show like Broadchurch with Olivia Colman. It's just very powerful. And it goes a long way into normalising that. So any young girl who watches that thinks, well, that can be me. Because seeing is believing, and seeing is a powerful mechanism for for other people being able to see that as almost a window to their own future.
Fantastic. So I'd like to talk about this goal of equality by 2050. What are some of those big milestones you see in the future that we need to hit socially to achieve this?
I think socially what we need to see is better representation, but also better language. So there are a few things. When you go to schools, you will start to see from the bottom up perspective, there's very much a path that is, this is the path that girls follow and this is the path that boys follow. And language has a lot to do with that. You play like a girl, you cry like a girl, don't act like a girl. Whereas what we need to start to do is to actually get really comfortable with the uncomfortable, and instead of just pushing away from that going, no, I'm not, the responses instead need to be, well, tell me why you say that and why that makes you so uncomfortable. And specifically, what is wrong with being a girl or being 50% of the population, or me being me? And why does it make you uncomfortable to be a boy and say that? And I think that, from a social perspective, there's some of the things that we need to see play out. From a social perspective and a household perspective, we need to see men come to the table and carry half the mental load from women. So from a household perspective, what we're seeing is women doing far much more of the housework. I remember in my first marriage, it was one of the things that bogged me down so much, and also being shamed into not talking about it as well, which is why I now talk about it so incredibly openly, that I am, one, not a domestic goddess, and two, I shouldn't be expected to be a domestic goddess. Mike, as you know, when you came in, we had cleaners here, and I think it's important to be able to free yourself and outsource as and when you need to. But initially, I felt as though I had the responsibility from a social perspective, especially, to not just do my university work. I was doing my master's time, and not just work my full-time job, but clean the house and vacuum and do the washing and do the cooking and so forth, because it was expected of me to do so as a good Indian wife. And we need to start dismantling that and talking against that.
And then in terms of that government level of involvement, are you hoping for more here in terms of, just in terms of policy, legislation? Do you think that's necessary, or can we get there on our own?
oh look, we can't get there on our own. I mean, the Labor Party. So first of all, we need equal leadership representation in Parliament. And the interesting thing about the government is how can you expect a Parliament to represent you when it doesn't represent or look like the population in who they serve? So it simply does not work. And it's not just about men and women representation, it's about cultural representation. One thing that the US does incredibly well, and I will get back to government in just a sec, but one thing the US does incredibly well is when they measure the gender pay gap, they don't just measure the gender pay gap against men and women. They also then summarise it further down and they say, well, this is how much black women get paid in comparison to white women. This is how much Hispanic women get paid in comparison to white women. This is how much Asian women get paid in comparison to white women. Because there is also a cultural penalty. So, if you're not a white man, then you're not going to get paid as much, but if you're not a white woman, you're not going to get paid as much either. Bias is incredibly nuanced, and it is very ignorant of us to simply go, you're a white guy, you're better off. Actually, tall white men are actually better off than shorter white men. Fit white men are better off than unfit white men, so on and so forth. And so therefore, from a cultural perspective, from a socioeconomic perspective, from a financial perspective, from where you live, everything, your sexual orientation, all of those things are biases. So I think that needs to be really opened up and dismantled. So let's go back to the government. When it comes to government, again, equal representation, not just men and women, but we need to have more brown women, we need to have more Asian women, we need to have women and men of different ethnicities actually representing us. And so to answer your question, can we get there on their own? No, we can't. In big business, when you want to create cultural change, you know that it gets affected from the top down. Your biggest leaders, your CEOs, your board, your CEOs, and all of your executive management down must embrace that change, must walk, talk, breathe that change authentically and actually enact it. And as a result, it'll start to come down through the organisation. Now, if the government wants to achieve that, they also need to do it.
So let's cast our minds forward into the future, and the future as you see it. A 2050 where there is equality in wealth between men and women, and also, and also equality in power, because you've talked about that between men and women. How different does our society look at that point?
Entirely different. I think it changes the, as you said, the power construct. It changes the social, economic construct. I think that we're going to see a far more safer world. We're going to see a richer world, a happier world, a world that is more at peace. And I certainly think that climate change would not be so fiercely debated as it is, and it would be simply something that we get on with. And I'll tell you what.
So we all win from that fusion.
We all win from that. In fact, there's a phenomenon called the girl effect, which is that when you empower a woman financially, you're actually not just empowering her, you're empowering her family, her community, her society, and that microeconomic community. But let me answer this question in a different way. There actually is something called the 50-50 phenomenon as well, where you have 50-50 representation of female leadership, especially at the senior ranks, the executive ranks, the CEO ranks. That company is actually more profitable, has better culture, and higher morale and productivity. So that is what the world is going to look like.
On that note, I'm going to say thank you. That was wonderful. So much. And that's a wrap on the future of wealth. But before you go, I need to ask you something. We're here to make a change, but we need your help to do it. The purpose of this series is to move humanity forward, think bigger, and cast our minds into the future together. So we'd love to know what made the biggest impression on you from today's conversation. Was it the current rate of progress towards gender equality, or the social implications caused by wealth disparity between women and men? Maybe it was the discussion around arranged marriage, wealth, and self-actualization. The best conversations happen right now, so please get involved, share the love, and leave a comment below. And another great place to join the conversation and find more stunning content is at Futurists.world. And when you're there, be sure to sign up for access to exclusive content and awesome giveaways, including a 1-month membership to The Remarkable Woman. You can also find us on all the usual social platforms via the links below. Thanks again for joining us. The future is out there. See you next time on Futurist World.